So why is it that you can hear these stations? You know, how are you hearing a station in, like, from here in New Orleans? How am I able to hear a station in Boston, Massachusetts, or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, from here in Louisiana? How does that work? Well, it's all because of the ionosphere, the area of our atmosphere that's above the actual, like, atmosphere where weather and things like that take place. We're talking about the ionosphere, the part that's up in space, where energy from the sun interacts with our magnetic field here on Earth. And because that's interacting with the sun plays a very big factor into how the ionosphere is constructed. And because of that, it can have a significant impact on AM radio signals. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. During the daytime, you have the sun overhead, and it's just throwing all this energy and all these photons that you can see, and all the ultraviolet radiation, all these other things it's throwing out from the sun towards our planet. That interacts with the magnetic field in our magnetosphere, and then interacts with the ionosphere. And as it does, it creates these layers in the ionosphere, and there are different layers that form that are at different elevations or different heights above ground, and each layer has slightly different properties. And the way that I like to think about these layers is that it's kind of like, if you have, like, envision a screen on your window, or a screen on, like, a front porch screen, something like that. You know how you have those little bitty holes, like, or just, it's big enough to let the air through on your screen, so you get the nice fresh air from outside, but it's small enough it keeps out the bugs, right? Keeps out most of your dirt. Some sand can get through and things like that, you know, dust and things like that can get through those little bitty holes. But bugs, flies, mosquitoes, things like that, they can't get through that screen. Our different layers in the ionosphere kind of work kind of like that. So during the daytime, the lowest level of the ionosphere is the D layer. And so with the D layer, the higher the frequency of a signal, the shorter the wavelength is, right? So you think about your FM radio signal that you have. The wavelength on an FM radio station is much, much shorter than the wavelength of a signal from an AM radio station, which is much, much wider. Okay, the lower the frequency is, the wavelength of that actual signal. I'm talking about the wave of the electromagnetic signal that's being sent out by the transmitter. The wavelength of that signal is much, much bigger and wider at lower frequencies than at higher frequencies. So because of that, those lower frequencies can't get through that D layer. The way it's constructed, it's like a very, very fine screen, and only the smallest wavelengths can get through that D layer. Your FM signals go through that D layer, and they keep on going up higher. AM signals hit that D layer, and they can't go anywhere else because they absorb into it, because the wavelength is too wide. It's too big to get through the holes in that D layer. At night, though, as the sun sets, okay, that D layer starts to break down, and then at night the D layer is gone. So what happens now is those signals from the AM stations will go up higher into the ionosphere, right? They don't have a D layer that's going to absorb them. They keep going higher and higher and higher into the ionosphere until they hit a layer called the F layer. That F layer actually bounces the signal, the AM radio signal, back down to the ground. So instead of absorbing it, it just takes that signal and it bounces. It's reflective for AM signals. It bounces it back down to the earth. And that creates what we call skywave propagation. And that skywave propagation, I know I've kind of drifted off here from the basics into, now we're into propagation. Skywave propagation is what allows us to hear stations from very, very long distances on the AM band. Okay, so when you're talking about me in Louisiana hearing Boston or Pittsburgh, it's because of skywave. It's because that signal is getting up into the F layer of the atmosphere, or the ionosphere, and bouncing back down to me. There's another element of these radio signals in addition to the skywave. The skywave signal is always there, by the way. There's always a part of the signal that's going up into space or towards space. It's just that during the daytime, it's getting absorbed by that D layer. At night, it is allowed to continue up to the F layer and bounce back down. But it's always there 24 hours a day. as long as that signal is being transmitted. What you're hearing in the daytime is a little bit different. The daytime, you're hearing just the ground wave. So that's the signal that radiates out from the transmitting tower, travels along the ground outwards in the direction of the antenna pattern, right? It travels outwards from that tower that's broadcasting the station and allows you to pick it up. Now, how far that ground wave signal travels depends on how strong they are, their antenna pattern, and the conductivity of the ground. Sometimes it can depend on conditions, like if it's snow cover, that can potentially travel further than non-snow cover. There's other factors that go into that as well. Salt water is a fantastic conductor. So that's what enables me to hear Cuba during the day from Louisiana, because between me and Cuba is nothing but salt water, which is a fantastic conductor of electromagnetic signals, right? That are coming out of these radio stations. So the ground wave is the part that you're hearing during the day. You can't hear the skywave signals because they're being absorbed by that D layer. But once the D layer goes away at night, all bets are off. And now you open up and stations are able to propagate much, much further because of the reflection off of the F layer, the ionosphere, and those skywave signals. That's why you have some of these stations that maybe they broadcast 50,000 watts during the day, but they have to power way down at night. Because if they didn't power way down at night, they'd be causing interference for all these other radio stations.